I've never seen the Persian Gulf this close to the edge. Right now, as I speak to you, the situation is escalating to a level we haven't witnessed before. The U.S. Navy is making final preparations for what senior commanders are calling a final blow, while Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is openly challenging American warships in the Strait of Hormuz. Senior Iranian officials have stepped forward, declaring they are acting under the direct historic order of the new supreme leader. They claim absolute dominance over the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's entire 2,000-kilometer coastline. Just hours ago, IRGC commanders delivered a brazen message. The Hormuz Strait naval blockade is a declaration of war, and our warriors can move into action tomorrow. On the surface, it looks like defiance, but here's what I find most striking, and I want you to think about this carefully. While they publicly boast about controlling the jugular vein of global energy trade behind the curtain, the same regime is sending envoy after envoy through Pakistan to Washington quietly, pleading, please stop the attacks. This is the strategic hypocrisy that is rapidly exhausting the Trump administration's patience. No nuclear weapon that remains America's number. One red line, and the briefing that CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper delivered at the White House makes it crystal clear. The United States has prepared options that go far beyond deterrence. You and I both know what's at stake. Iran wants to keep enriching uranium to 60% while simultaneously holding the world's oil lifeline hostage. But the mathematics of modern warfare don't favor romantic notions of asymmetric resistance. The regime's confidence rests on swarms of ultra-fast missile boats like the Haider 110. On paper, they sound terrifying. Carbon fiber, catamarans weighing just 9 tons, capable of screaming across the water at 110 knots. Yet, as I've studied the battlefield reality, I can already see how this plan is about to collide with something far more lethal, because when those boats leave their bases, they won't just face ships, they'll fly straight into the teeth of America's most relentless tank killers in the sky. Let me be very direct with you. What we are watching is not strength. It is a desperate regime putting on a final show of force while its internal structure is already cracking. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to take you deep inside this unfolding confrontation, from the missile boats racing at 203 kilometers per hour to the hypersonic reality that may soon rewrite the map of the Middle East. Stay with me. This is going to be intense. In every video, I cut through the noise and deliver the clearest, deepest analysis of the military, geopolitical, and economic forces reshaping our world today. In this episode, I'm going to show you exactly why Iran's bold claims are far weaker than they sound, and how the United States is preparing a response that could permanently change the balance of power in the Middle East. From swarm boats versus A-10 warthogs to hypersonic missiles, secret diplomacy, and the looming naval blockade, I'll break it all down step by step with the facts and context you won't find anywhere else. If you want to stay ahead of these fast-moving events, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's dive in. On the surface, Iran is projecting total confidence. Senior Revolutionary Guard commanders have repeatedly declared that they now hold absolute dominance over the Strait of Hormuz and the entire 2,000 km Iranian coastline. They state they are operating under the direct historic orders of the new supreme leader, and they are not hiding their intentions. Just recently, an IRGC spokesman delivered one of the most provocative messages yet. The Hormuz Strait naval blockade is a declaration of war, and our warriors can move into action tomorrow. The regime is betting everything on its asymmetric naval doctrine, a strategy built around speed and swarm tactics. At the heart of this plan are their pride and joy, the Haider 110 ultra-fast stealth missile boats. These twin-hulled catamarans, constructed from lightweight carbon fiber and weighing only 9 tons, can reach speeds of 110 knots. That's roughly 203 kilometers per hour. Iranian commanders believe these small, agile vessels can dart through shallow waters, penetrate the radar range of massive American warships, and overwhelm them with sheer numbers and confusion. To the Iranian leadership, this is their moment to prove that technological superiority can be neutralized by courage and creative tactics. They want the world to believe that even the mighty U.S. Navy can be held at bay by swarms of small boats operating close to shore. But here's what I find most interesting, and I want you to keep this in mind as we continue. While they make these loud theatrical threats in public, something very different is happening behind closed doors. As I'll show you in the coming minutes, this outward aggression masks a much more desperate reality. The regime is trying to play a high-stakes game, refusing to back down on its 60% uranium enrichment program while simultaneously using the Strait of Hormuz as leverage. The question is, can this strategy actually work? Let's move beyond the surface and examine what's really waiting for them when the shooting starts. But this plan on paper looks very different when it meets the ruthless reality of 21st century warfare. I've studied these scenarios carefully, and what Iran is preparing to do is far more dangerous for them than they realize. Let's talk about those Haider 110 boats. Yes, they are fast, extremely fast. Carbon fiber catamarans, weighing just 9 tons, capable of 110 knots. Iranian commanders believe these vessels can swarm in shallow waters, evade radar, and overwhelm American warships through sheer numbers and speed. On the surface, it sounds like a clever asymmetric strategy. However, Washington is ready with something far deadlier. If Iran launches these swarm attacks, the U.S. military won't respond with ships alone. They are preparing A-10 Thunderbolt II jets, the legendary tank killers, for a deadly hunt over the Gulf. These aircraft are perfect for this mission. Flying low and slow, they can loiter for extended periods thanks to a critical upgrade. They can now refuel in the air from C-130 Hercules, tankers using the probe and drogue system. This gives them hours of endurance, turning them into mobile hunter platforms above the water. When Zarchundachindar, Bandida Dian, the Haider 110 boats race forward at 203 km per hour, the A-10s will be waiting with their terrifying 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon firing 70 rounds per second of depleted uranium, armor-piercing shells. Against that kind of firepower, even the fastest speedboat becomes an easy target. And that's not all. The skies will also be filled with American attack helicopters, Apaches, and Cobras armed with Hellfire missiles. These missiles use advanced thermal and laser seekers that can lock onto fast-moving boats within seconds. Even if a Haider 110 reaches top speed, it is still laughably slow compared to a supersonic missile or the hail of cannon fire from above. I want you to picture this clearly: a swarm of Iranian boats racing across the Gulf, believing they can create chaos. Within moments, they will be met by a wall of precision fire from the sky. What they call a speed trap will quickly turn into a suicide mission. Most of these boats will likely be destroyed before they can even get within firing range of American warships. But Iran's challenges don't stop at sea. If they attempt retaliation with ballistic missiles or kamikaze drones, they will run into an even stronger barrier. Right now, 3 aircraft carriers, 27 warships, and over 200 fighter jets are positioned around the strait. F-18s and F-35s create a massive electronic warfare umbrella that can jam radar and guidance systems the moment an Iranian weapons launch. Iran's communication and targeting networks will be paralyzed almost instantly. And then there's the game changer, the dark Eagle hypersonic missile system. CENTCOM is preparing to deploy these weapons to the region. Traveling at over Mach 5 with advanced maneuverability, Dark Eagle can defeat traditional air defenses and strike deep inside Iran. The regime has long relied on hiding missile launchers in mountains in remote areas, believing distance would protect them. That strategy is about to become obsolete. As I analyze all of this, one truth becomes painfully clear. Iran's asymmetric doctrine, built on speed and swarms, is about to face the full weight of American technological superiority. The gap is not just large, it is overwhelming. You and I both know that. Courage alone cannot overcome this kind of firepower. What looks like bravery on Iranian state television may soon reveal itself as one of the most costly strategic miscalculations in modern military history. The real question is not whether Iran can win this fight at Secha. The real question is how much they will lose and how quickly when the shooting actually begins. This is not a short-term show of force. What truly stands out to me as I follow the developments is the scale and seriousness of America's logistical preparations. In recent days, the air corridors between Europe and the Middle East have been extremely busy. C-17, Globemaster heavy transport aircraft, have been flying almost nonstop. On a single day alone, observers counted 11 C-17s departing from Ramstein Air Base in Germany and Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, heading toward key hubs in Jordan, Qatar, and Djibouti. Turkey's Incirlik base has become a critical launch pad for this massive air bridge. These flights are not just moving supplies for a quick operation. They are building a sustained support network capable of supporting a prolonged conflict if necessary. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and maintenance equipment are being pre-positioned across multiple locations. 3 aircraft carriers, 27 surface warships, and more than 200 fighter jets are already on station around the Strait of Hormuz. Keeping this force effective for weeks or even months requires an enormous and well-coordinated logistics chain. You can see the difference in mindset here. While Iran is relying on fast boats and dispersed missile launchers, the United States is constructing a complete ecosystem of air, sea, and ground support. This is the hidden strength that often decides modern conflicts before the first shots are even fired. What impresses me most is the speed and efficiency of this buildup. The U.S. military is not reacting. It is methodically preparing the battlefield on its own terms. From Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean to forward bases in the Gulf, every piece of the puzzle is being put into place. As someone who has followed military movements for years, I can tell you this level of logistical coordination signals one clear message. Washington is ready for whatever comes next, whether that is days, weeks, or months of high-intensity operations. This brings us to an even more uncomfortable reality for Tehran. While they focus on dramatic public statements, the United States is quietly building the foundation for sustained dominance. The gap is not only technological, it is also a gap in planning, resources, and endurance. And that gap may soon become impossible for Iran to ignore. While America builds this massive logistics network in plain sight, a very different picture is emerging inside Iran. The loud public threats hide a regime that is quietly unraveling. Despite their aggressive statements, Iranian officials have been frantically sending diplomats through back channels to Washington, desperately asking for the attacks to stop. This contradiction between their bold words on television and their private pleas reveals a leadership caught in deep panic. They want to keep pushing their nuclear program while hoping the world will blink first. Unfortunately for them, the Trump administration sees this game clearly and has lost patience with it. The situation inside Iran is becoming increasingly unstable. Mysterious explosions and unexplained gas leaks continue to hit major cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz. These incidents are not just isolated accidents. They point to a system struggling to maintain control, even within its own borders. The regime that claims to dominate the Strait of Hormuz is finding it harder and harder to guarantee security on its own streets. Perhaps the most damaging blow is coming from its own neighbors. The United Arab Emirates has taken steps that carry deep symbolic and practical weight. Not only has the UAE opened its territory for intensive American military logistics, but it has also issued urgent warnings to its citizens to immediately leave Iran, Lebanon, and Iraq. Even more striking, Emirati authorities have begun removing flags of the Islamic Republic from shops and public areas, replacing them with the old Iranian flag bearing the lion and sun, a direct rejection of the current regime's legitimacy. This is more than simple diplomacy. It is a powerful neighbor openly distancing itself from a collapsing system. For a regime that has spent decades positioning itself as a regional powerhouse, such public abandonment from the UAE is humiliating and dangerous. As I look at the broader picture, Iran is finding itself increasingly alone. Its proxies are under pressure. Its supply lines are being disrupted, and even its closest regional partners are turning away. The leadership in Tehran continues to project strength for domestic consumption, but the walls are closing in from multiple directions at once. This growing isolation is not just military or economic. It is political and psychological. And as the pressure builds, the gap between what the regime tells its people and what it knows privately continues to widen. This growing isolation brings us to the final and most decisive element of the current crisis, the naval blockade. Iran has long viewed the Strait of Hormuz as its ultimate weapon. For decades, their strategy rested on one simple threat. If pushed too far, they would close the strait and hold the global economy hostage. When the conflict escalated, they followed through and shut it down. Oil prices surged. Europe faced fuel shortages, and the world felt the immediate shock. But Washington has responded with a masterful countermove. Instead of simply trying to reopen the strait through force alone, the United States is doing something far more damaging. They are clearing the mines, establishing safe corridors for international shipping, and simultaneously locking down Iran's own ports. In effect, the world can still trade through the strait, but Iran cannot. This is the cruel irony now unfolding. The very weapon Iran prepared for years has been turned against them. Their oil exports, already hanging by a thread, have almost completely stopped. Import chains for food, medicine, and spare parts are being severed. Revenue is collapsing toward zero at the worst possible moment. I've been tracking this development closely, and what strikes me is how comprehensive the American approach has become. With 3 carrier strike groups and dozens of destroyers on station, the U.S. Navy is enforcing a blockade that is both physical and financial. Even if Iran manages to sneak a few tankers out, the secondary sanctions and naval interception make it nearly impossible to sustain meaningful exports. You can see the regime's dilemma clearly now. They wanted to punish the world by closing the strait. America's answer has been brutally simple. Fine, we'll open it for everyone, else and close it for you. This blockade is not just military. It is economic strangulation, and unlike previous sanctions, this one comes after Iran has already exhausted much of its financial reserves and proxy funding. Salaries for Revolutionary Guard members are delayed. Support for Hezbollah and the Houthis is drying up, and public frustration inside. Iran continues to build. The situation also raises difficult questions about sustainability. Running such a large naval operation largely by themselves puts real pressure on American resources. However, current logistics flights suggest Washington is prepared to maintain this pressure for an extended period if necessary. As someone who follows these strategic developments, I believe this reverse blockade may prove to be the most effective move yet. Iran's final card, the one they counted on most, is no longer working in their favor. Instead, it is accelerating the very collapse they hope to avoid. The regime now faces a painful choice: continue this dangerous game and watch their economy flatline, or find a way to step back before internal pressure becomes uncontrollable. The pieces are now falling into place. After watching Iran's last strategic card being turned against them through this reverse blockade, one thing has become painfully clear: the regime is running out of options and time. What we are witnessing is not just a military confrontation, but the systematic dismantling of Iran's long-held regional ambitions. Their asymmetric doctrine, once feared, now looks increasingly fragile against America's integrated technological and logistical superiority. The gap in planning, endurance, and execution has never been wider. I believe we are approaching a decisive moment. The Tehran leadership faces three difficult paths forward. They can choose genuine diplomatic concessions on their nuclear program to ease the pressure. They can continue this dangerous gamble and risk major internal unrest as the economy continues to collapse. Or they can escalate further, triggering a direct and overwhelming American response. Whatever choice they make, the consequences will be historic. The era in which Iran could threaten the global energy artery while hiding behind geographic depth and proxies is rapidly coming to an end. The combination of naval blockade, air superiority, and hypersonic capabilities has shifted the balance of power in ways that will be difficult to reverse. To me, this conflict reveals a broader truth about modern geopolitics. Bold rhetoric and dramatic gestures ultimately mean very little when they are not backed by sustainable strategy and real capabilities. Iran bet everything on the Strait of Hormuz. That bet is now failing. As we move forward, the coming days and weeks will be critical. Will the regime find a face-saving way to de-escalate, or will they double down and accelerate their own decline? The answer will not only determine Iran's future, but also reshape the security architecture of the entire Middle East for years to come. The story is still unfolding, and it is far from over. The story of this high-stakes confrontation in the Persian Gulf is still being written, and its outcome will shape the region for a generation. Now, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about this unfolding situation? Can Iran's swarm boat strategy realistically succeed against America's air power and naval blockade, or is this becoming one of the costliest miscalculations in modern military history? How long do you believe the regime can hold out before domestic pressure forces a change? If you're finding these detailed breakdowns valuable, please support the channel by subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an update. We'll continue tracking every major development as it happens. Also, if you enjoy listening to in-depth analysis during your commute or downtime, check out our podcast on Spotify. The link is in the description below. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. Stay informed, stay ahead, and I'll see you in the next video.